This space addresses very personal and vulnerable life topics delivered with an element of comedy that many will find repulsive. This is also an incredibly spiritual podcast born through the experiences of an oracle, a house witch, and a unicorn. It is intended for open-minded adults only. Maturity is not required. Welcome to the Spectral Expansion Experience. Come grow with me.
Welcome, Spectral fans, C fans, to the Spectral Expansion Experience. I have been away for a while. I came in with a bang with my co-host on the Dumplin' and Mandy edition of the Spectral Expansion Experience, where we had a fun video of our first podcast on January 6th, which was the full moon in Cancer. And then I launched another one following up with that on the art of allowance, where I was going to come in with part 2 of that into high functioning perspective, which is how we kind of navigate and stay within that and allow the art of allowance, right? Allow the art of allowance. But you allow, you allow it. You allow it. And so that was the goal, right? I had a plan. That's the point of the story, is I had a plan to back into, basically, to start on the full moon in Cancer and to back into the theme that came up for me, which was getting comfortable with uncertainty and learning that through mystery and uncertainty, that is where experience is born, right? And then how I get into that comfort with uncertainty is by mastering the art of allowance. And then how I get into the art of allowance is stepping into this more high functioning perspective that allows me to be in that space, right, of just surrender and receptivity. So that was the goal. That was the goal line for the podcast. That's the point of the story I'm trying to get to. That was the goal line for the podcast, but that is not what happened. Instead, January happened, and January is going to do what January is going to do. And I didn't want to be in conflict with January. With as many things as I have going on in my life right now, I know that the momentum of this podcast is going to pick up. I know that my success is inevitable. I know this for a fact. And so I trust the timing. Why do I trust the timing? Well, because I'm intuitive. This is the spectral expansion experience, right? So I'm an intuitive. I work with the energies. I see these things all the time, and it is my whole life mission to expand in this area. And so I have to, by very nature of my belief system and what I practice or what I preach, is I have to trust the timing. Now, there is a time when you need to take action. Absolutely take inspired action. It is absolute bullshit that you can just sit there and things will just drop in your lap. I don't care. But there is a time of surrender as well, right? There's a time when you have done the footwork and you have to trust the timing. There's a time when maybe you don't know what the footwork is, and it's time to kind of get still and trust the timing, because other things are being thrown in front of you. Your attention is being called elsewhere. And so and sometimes there are things we cannot control, right? If there's major illnesses in the family, or things to do with, your children, or things, things like that, they have to be tended to. If my husband and I, we totaled our car right before Christmas. It wasn't our fault. We were rear-ended. Both cars were totaled. We all walked away fine. You want to talk about spectral. There was divine intervention there. My daughter should have been with us during that time. I always love the little synchronicities when I can look back and I can see how spirit is really authentically working in my life. But anyway, right? So the point is, to stay on track, things get thrown at you, right? And I can't not deal with that. I can't say, well, I had a car accident, and then not call the insurance company, not take the necessary steps, right, to process the claim, right? I have to still do those things. Okay. So I'm not saying don't take action and don't show up for life when it's necessary. Um, but there is a time to surrender completely. And I mean just to surrender completely. And so I had to with this podcast. I had to. So I am starting over with the timeline. I loved coming in with the bang. If you didn't get to check out our, it's like 24 minutes of your life or whatever. The very first podcast, it was fun. It was raunchy, but it got to the point, and I love that. And then I walked into another podcast where it was a little more serious, a little more formal, and I loved that information because it was so critical to me in that moment at that time that I wanted to share and help you expand with me through my experience. But right now, that trajectory has changed. So I'm back on my podcast, just like I said I would be. I'm not going anywhere. But we're not going to talk about high functioning perspective. And I'll tell you why. Because every fucking thing we do on here and that we expand with is going to put you in that level if you allow it, right? If you let it. It's going to elevate you into that perspective, right? Into that high functioning state. If you can align, right? If you show up in this space with me and you can align to with or align, excuse me, align with what I'm saying, and we have this resonance and your belief systems or how you want to function or how you want to show up in life. Um, we complement each other, then you will automatically be elevated and invited to level up into that high functioning perspective that puts you into this um, greater expanded state of awareness where you are now you're tippy top with your executive functioning. You are on the money with your creative resolution. You're in that high functioning free flow state where everything is just fluid. Things are coming down. It's like stuff is just dropping into you out of the ether, right? And it's not that things are not happening. It's not that life isn't throwing its wrenches. It's not that those things aren't coming in. It's not that illnesses and family matters and issues with parents and divorces and car wrecks and layoffs and all these things. It's not that these things don't happen, right? But once you step into this higher level of functioning with your perceptivity, right? When we're perceiving at a level that takes us out of this kind of 3D, real dense energy, and we step over into something creative and we dare to allow, if we say, what the fuck, what do I have to lose, right? What if she's right? What if all these crazy woo woo wackos are right? And we dare to allow, then just by that permission, you're stepping into a state of high functioning perspective. So I was going to come at you from the science arena, like I did in my second podcast with the Art of Allowance. And it's not that I will not back my stuff up when I can, want, and feel like it. But this is the spectral expansion experience. And I really struggled with this because I'm like, if I don't throw science, because I'm a psychology major, so if I don't go get all of the books and all of the things that I know to back these things up, right? And all of these ancillary studies and things, because I'm a nerd. People say, "What are your hobbies?" And I say, "Well, I read textbooks. That's a hobby. I study psychology. That's a hobby. Oh, yes, it was also my major. It's still a hobby. I whatever." But that's not this space, right? That's just a utility that I use to beef up and to add texture and context. And when I can provide a bridge between spirituality and science that bridges a gap so beautifully that it is profound that you can't ignore it, of course I'm going to bring those two elements together. But my point is, I was too focused on that aspect of it and not focused on the natural free flow state that I promised this was going to be. I say in my intro that this is brought to you by an oracle, a house witch, and a unicorn. And what kind of fucking unicorn would I be if I'm just throwing science in your face all the time? So here brings me to now. I had to take a break because January is crazy. It is just crazy. Um, so that's what it is. So here's my time, and I'm here now with you because um, Spirit told me so. And I am not even playing with you right now. Shit is moving in my entryway. Shit is moving in my dining room, and my cats were going crazy. Now they've calmed down. They're laying on my bed right behind me. But they were stirring around, and I could feel the tinglies. I could feel the ears starting to ring. I could hear the buzzing and the ringing. And so I knew, and I suddenly stood up from where I was. I just stood up out of nowhere as if something else had taken over, and I walked in here and I immediately grabbed my tarot cards. Now, I've already pushed out a tarot reading for today for my YouTube channel, The Peaceful Tigress Tarot. But that's not what this is about. I've been guided by spirit. I don't know, you guys, I don't know why I think that's so funny. I don't know why. Um, I'm in a goofy mood right now. Anyway, I have been led to you today, and I grabbed my tarot deck, and you're going to hear me shuffling um, on here. I haven't decided if I'm going to post this as a video or not. Or if it's just going to be the audio. I really only said that usually when I do the Mandy and Dumplin edition of this show, which is when I have my co-host Sherilyn on with me, so fun. You have to visually observe our dynamic and our chemistry. It's part of the show, right? But otherwise, I just talk. So I usually do not record myself. I say usually, like I've done 7 of them. I've done 2. The plan was I would not. So I'm deciding as I do these tarot cards. Spirit has called me in to say launch another podcast, and I will guide the way. I will guide your subject by the spread we pull, by the story the cards tell, right? By the theme that I'm given. So that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. And so I am going to finish shuffling these cards, and I just wanted to catch you up, really, you know? I wanted to catch you up with what was going on, what I've been feeling, right? I'm really feeling my feelings right now, you guys. There's so much that's been going on. My mother, who passed away June 15th of 2020 of cancer of the peritoneum. And then my grandfather died just last July 9th. And which is funny because my mom's sister, his daughter, who died 6 or 7 years before my mother was born, in 61, I think. My mom was born in 67. 61. She died at 4 years old of cancer. And she died either on the 9th or 10th of July. So my mom was born on July 11th. Her sister, who predated her, would die on July either 9th or 10th. And my grandfather also died on July 9th. And then my mom died June 15th. So interesting timing. So my mom's been trying to reach out to me, and I had a very, very crazy week a couple of weeks ago where through 3 different channels, my mother was reaching out to me through 3 different individuals who don't know each other. And so I love that, right? I love the that's why this is the spectral expansion experience, right? And she came, and I'll tell you the story later. I might tell you the next podcast, but she came in to tell me that basically to get ready for my grandmother to transition soon. And after I left my therapy session, which is strangely where she was channeled, and we were not even speaking about my mother or my past. We were actually talking about my podcast. And so this was on January 9th, which is my grandmother's birthday. And I was actually on my way to see my grandmother right after my therapy session ended. And my therapist did not know this. And we had a crazy moment, and I will share it with you later. And then I said, I've got to tell you, I think my mom came in because there is a major life event about to take place, and I think I'm being guided through it. Now, there are several major life events that I have seen already, but um, it moved to the front of the line for me, right on my timeline. So, so right after that, I text the director of the memory care facility that my grandmother stays at, and I don't tell her anything. I say I'm leaving my appointment. I don't tell her that it's a therapy appointment, and I say, I'm headed there to see my grandmother. I've got some flowers and a cake. And she said, okay, before you leave, I want to talk to you. Make sure you don't leave here before I talk to you. So I see my grandmother. She walks me out. I visit. And that's when she proceeds to tell me that my grandmother has not been eating now, and that she's on a special watch, and that she has been having full on conversations with my grandfather, the one who passed away July 9th. This is very new. Um, I have just recently found journals and articles that my grandmother wrote, and little diaries and uh, things that she was writing about for little meetings that she went to that I'm trying to understand still, that lead me to believe that she was incredibly intuitive and incredibly in touch with a higher source. Um, I think, however, unfortunately, it is, it's covered with a different language, right? It is the Judeo-Christian language, but the way she describes this higher power, the way she talks about feeling this source, she calls it, um, the way she talks about how she knows I feel my higher power with me. And when I feel that, I know then I am creating. Okay, that is a quote that she wrote. So I'm learning about my lineage. I'm learning about why, I was brought up in such, I was brought up in a Lutheran church, such a rigid and structured childhood, it was very traditional. And I'm trying to figure out, you don't talk about ghosts, you don't talk about things like that. And I could not figure out where this came from with me. And I don't really know my dad very well. I know him. I know of him. Um, we have history in the beginning years, but I don't know anything besides that. So to find these letters, to find these memoirs, to find these little written passages from my grandmother, and I read pages and pages of them. It helped me to understand my ancestral background and kind of that this has been passed along. And it brought me great comfort in knowing that I am fulfilling my life's purpose, my life mission, and that I'm breaking ancestral patterns by by daring to step outside the box and be and do what my grandmother was trying to describe, but she was restricted in the confines of a religious structure, right? She was restricted in her language. She was restricted in how she could provide context. She was restricted in in this other language. And but I could feel her. I could feel her power. I could feel her essence, and she's still alive. but I could feel her almost like she was coursing through my veins. And so that's what this show is about, right? It's about these life synchronicities. It's about stepping into high functioning perspective, but I'm coming at you from a spiritual standpoint, right? I'm coming at you from how do we shift our narrative and how do we change our storyline into something that is uh, far more empowering, that inspires action, that propels us and launches us forward. How do we take a very real life story and change the narrative so that you're now looking through it, and not even the narrative. How do we change the lens, right? Because you have this perception. We perceive life a certain way. Wayne Dyer said, when you can't change the things around you, then when you change the way you look at the things around you change, right? So when you don't have that kind of control, then the only control you have is your own perceptivity, right? That's it. So once you realize that your perception is not reality, right? Perception is not reality, right? It's just the lens you're using to view reality. That's all you're doing. Well, then you can swap out that lens. That's empowerment. That's high functioning perspective. When you realize you can swap out the lens in which you are using to view life, when you realize that you can change out the dusty, old, outdated filter in which you are using to process information that is coming in, when you realize that you can shift that to tell something different, to tell something more empowering, to do something more empowering, when you realize that you do have that kind of power, then you are stepping into a high functioning, like free flow state of just unlimited potential, of just this high functioning flow state, right? And so, yeah, that is a long-winded way to say we're gonna fucking talk a lot about high functioning perspective, but I'm going to bring it at you a different way. And this is such an unscripted podcast because it is the spectral expansion. And so, like I said, let's go back to the tarot cards. Um, these crazy events have been happening in January, these synchronicities, my family members reaching out that have already crossed over to prepare me for more life events. I also have another family member. Uh, the only other one I have left that I have a relationship with, all still on my mom's side. None of my dad's still talking about my mother, my grandmother, my grandfather, and one other relationship. And that too, um, just due to illness is not looking promising on the timeline. Even I think the doctors quoted, and there was two actually. There was a nurse on one occasion and another doctor that quoted that this relative of mine is on borrowed time. Now this relative of mine is not you know, my grandmother is who I feel is being visited and why I feel my mother is stepping in right now. But this person is not far behind. And sadly, because I am the last living relative, um, the um, the responsibilities that naturally happen once a loved one has passed or crossed over will again fall into my hands. So January has been crazy, but the synchronicities and the love and just the beautiful commitment from my celestial community to step in and guide me is absolutely beautiful. I don't have words, and that is why this is the spectral expansion experience. So I'm going to use these cards as Spirit has suggested to pull the theme. So the first part of this podcast, the first part of this podcast is we're going on 24 minutes right now, just hit, is to kind of back up for a minute and realign and kind of reset the tone of this podcast and the direction I take it, right? And then the second part is to see what the cards want to bring forth today. Maybe it's confirmation about what I've already just talked about, or maybe we're gonna, flip it and completely go somewhere else and do a 180. I don't know. So let's see. I'm gonna pull a couple of tarot cards. And right now I'm getting a Moonology Oracle card. Three of them. Okay. And this is why I fucking tell you it's the Spectral Expansion Experience. Because I just got done telling you, didn't I just say it could be an expansion of what I've already started to talk to you about, right? This is not scripted, it's free flowing. I told you I just stood up and was like, I'm going to go do this podcast and I'm going to explain where I've been and why I'm redirecting this. And then I gave you some little juicy, fun little spectral snippets of the encounters I've had with my mother and my grandfather and kind of what's been going on and the expectations of my grandmother. She is, close to 90, or she just turned 89, excuse me. My grandfather was 92. And we're going on a few weeks now. She's not eating. So we're talking about hospice. She is a Capricorn. And I just got, so for my layout, I've got the end of a tough cycle approaches, full moon in Capricorn, with a message, an oracle message to look at the bigger picture, and that conclusions are within reach. Okay. And then I pulled the Wheel of Fortune, which is the number 10 in my in tarot. And 10 is a completion number in tarot. Okay, my grandmother is a Capricorn. The other relative that I'm talking about, that I was mentioning, is a Capricorn. Um, so already I've got karmic cycles stepping in. And then I've got the Page of Wands. Okay, so I've got this Page of Wands, and usually there is some sort of, the page can bring news. The page is a more youthful energy of new ideas or messages or news to come, but usually wands are fire. So the Page of Wands comes with an invitation of a new passionate beginning. And it comes right at the foot of the unending, right? So in number 10, so the Wheel of Fortune, and that is usually about karmic cycles, karmic chapters, things that you have karmically come to endeavor to learn to expand as a soul, right? You came here, we came here as spiritual beings to experience ourselves as co-creative extensions of this divine source, creatrix, creator, God, right? This consciousness, this ethereal consciousness, right? And we came to know ourselves in tangible form, experientially, right? We know ourselves in consciousness, but we know ourselves experientially, right? Know thyself. So here we are, little mini extensions of the divine, figuring out all the different ways we can know ourselves experientially. And so within that structure are these karmic designs, right? And you have the free will. I completely believe you're in charge of them. And you can move and expand with the trajectory that is your greatest good, or you can go against it, right? We have free will. We could do whatever the fuck we want, really. But so it's just interesting to me that as I tell you about my mother, as I tell you about my grandmother's birthday on January 9th, as I tell you about how I'm talking about my podcast with my therapist, and then blah, 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 lots of words happen, um, then drop in my mom out of nowhere. Um, okay, I'm shortening the story. This is the Cliffs Notes version. And then we move forward to the director telling me that my grandmother is having full on conversations with my passed away grandfather when that was never a thing in our family. Then I come across these passages, right? I come across these passages that she has written about creating, knowing that she is creating with each step she's taking when she's leaning into her higher power, when she feels it, when she tunes into it, she says. What is that? That is juicy awesomeness. That's what that is. That's C, right? The Spectral Expansion Experience. Come see with me. Dare to look in a different direction, maybe, right? What do you have to lose? What if I'm right? Like, what do you have to lose? And don't answer, Christian, don't answer that. I don't, you're going to tell me your salvation. If Rhetorical question. But if you are here, just like I say on my tarot readings, then I already believe we are kindred spirits. Okay, I already believe there's a hunger or a curiosity. Even if I say something that makes you kind of squirm a little bit or feel uncomfortable, you would not be tuning in or listening or continuing to listen if there wasn't something that was resonating within you as you're listening to these words, right? As I'm exchanging this service, as I'm exchanging my experience, um, it's an invitation to get creative, to think outside the box, to think, what if I let myself go down this crazy fucking spectral rabbit hole? What if I did? What if I knew that I was so guided that if I could open up my eyes and allow these things, right, that I'd get to taste all these juicy little synchronicities? And that is comforting, right? That allows me to shut down some of the chatter and to go forth with inspired action, right? That's high functioning perspective, right? Because I believe so profoundly in what is going on that there is a level of comfort because I trust in my belief system. I trust in my nudges. I trust in my gifts. I trust in what we call the paranormal. I trust that it is just such a normal state of remembering, right? It's coming back home. It's coming back home. So I pulled the tarot card, Wheel of Fortune, number 10. A karmic cycle ends. Something comes to fruition so the next chapter can begin, right? And then I pull a page of wands, which is the crow standing on a wand, right? So there's a message. The crow to me is a messenger. And then I get the end of a tough cycle approaches. That's Capricorn. That's crazy. We just we just we just moved out of Capricorn. And Capricorn is my grandmother. And I'm talking about all of these other things. Look at the bigger picture, full moon in Sagittarius. Here's another funny thing. So I told you Capricorn is my grandmother, and Capricorn is also this other relative. But this relative's moon sign, this other relative, is Sagittarius. And then I get conclusions are within reach. This is absolute guidance from spirit, right? Absolute guidance from spirit. Yes, big shit is going to happen in our lives. That is what we came here for, to experience the contrast, to experience the chaos, to dive deep. If what are you here for if everything is certain? If everything is certain for you, then what is the point of experience? If you if you are going to come in and control every aspect of this experience, then you are going to set yourself up for suffering. Allow, trust that you're being guided. Take the inspired action when you are inspired to do so, of course. Pay your taxes. If somebody rear-ends you and accordions their car, file the insurance claim. Okay, I'm not telling you not to have your human experience, but don't forget where you come from. And if you have joined me today on the Spectral Expansion Experience, then you have come because you are trying to remember where you come from. And I am here to guide you through my journey to hopefully help you remember yours. That is my service, and that is why I'm here, and that is what this podcast is about today. So, what a wild and crazy little ride. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will be back with more and more and more and more. Bye-bye, Sea fans.